morals over money. Put your morals over money.
That we will uphold against anyone that stands against us.
Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Gifford with the Truth Trumpet, and I'm back. It's been a long month, but a great month. That's not what I'm here to talk about, though. While I was gone, I went far up north and got married. It wasn't a surprise, not to me and not to anyone in the family, maybe to you, but that's kind of where I've been for the last pretty much month. Having said that, I'm sure everybody that might be seeing this is aware of what's been going on in the news as of recent times. People that didn't get the arm candy, people that didn't comply the first time, you're all pretty much up to speed. This broadcast is, of course, for anybody, but I'm getting a lot of questions regarding, first of all, when I started letting people know the minute InfoWars broke last week that it was a guarantee, a definitive policy coming down the pipelines that these mandate measures are going to start coming back incrementally through policy, through corporate policy, and through government's inaction or complicit action to follow these corporate policies going against the law, which is what they did before, and it didn't matter, right? If they went, if a bylaw was always in place to not enforce wearing masks, as we all saw, even though the law was in place, because memos and policy and, well, people being complicit with those policies and wanting to keep their job for whatever reasons they had in their own mind that they rationalized, they enforced these illegal measures before. We know that. So my question or my thought process is to the people that I spoke with on the campaign trail for the provincial elections, and for the regular folks that I spoke to along the way up north and throughout the province as I traveled. There's a lot of people who did comply and were willing to speak with me that complied during the last measures, but thankfully they witnessed things that they didn't like, whether it be within themselves or through exterior forces. And they're not planning on complying if these measures get brought through. And I'm, again, thankful and glad that they're saying this. My curiosity is where the thought process is. When one says that they're not going to comply, again, I need help understanding. I only know what's in my own head, and I know what I think. I don't know how other people think unless they explain to me. But for me, knowing that I won't comply with illegal measures, it's not just taking the action and being brave and knowing the law and things like that. But you have to understand the mechanisms of which they will utilize in order to coerce you, to twist your arm, to dangle the carrot, to bring you to the same rationale that most people brought themselves to, that they made the choice, the right choice at the time. They're just not going to make that choice now. For example, I spoke to many people who believe they took one shot. They don't plan on taking more. They took the one shot, whether they felt they needed to or were pressured or guilted to keep their job. A lot of people did it to travel. At least that was what they told me. And I understand, but I had to stop them abruptly and say, well, you made the choice, but you, like a mouse in a maze, were guided to that choice. Whether one wants to believe it, admit it to themselves, it's difficult to admit things to ourselves. I've gotten pretty decent at it. I like looking in the proverbial mirror. I don't often find myself looking in an actual mirror, but I look in the proverbial mirror and I figure if I can improve myself or actually look at myself in the light that other people might see, not in the light that only my mother would see, perhaps, or maybe if you have a good mother and father, sometimes they view you with rose-colored glasses, and that's nice, it's beautiful, but it might not be the truth, right? We should know innately what's right and wrong, and we know what the truth is. And sometimes, though, we try to hide that from ourselves because we don't want to feel the guilt, right? We don't want to feel guilty. We don't want to feel pressured, especially when the world is telling us the pathway of what the right thing to do is, what gets you things, what allows you to have clout, sometimes, what allows you to have physical items, monetary items, allows you to get ahead in life and jobs. So these policies, again, are not going to come into place like a tsunami, right? They're not going to just pop up where everyone sees it and it's so familiar, whether it happened last time or not. But it's not going to happen where there it is, the mandates, right? The only reason why anybody's talking about it now is because we know it's the plan, right? We know it's the narrative of these globalists. And if it's the plan and it hasn't happened yet, they have to find a way to rationalize the narrative to get to the end result of Agenda 2030, now pushed back to Agenda 31. So we've done a little bit. We've pushed them back a little bit on their agenda, which I think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, which I think there's a quickening happening with these initiatives, wildfires, all these other things that are happening, anomalies around the world, in order to drive the narrative and get it to the goal timeline that they want and need it to get to. But if corporations are the ones that are pushing the policies, just like last time, except you had the government utilizing the Emergency Order and Emergency Act in order to skirt the law or to use Wartime Measure Act laws and they can do anything they want, right? And justify it because of the emergency. Now, in my opinion, I think the government can step back a little bit, and they will step back. Psychologically, they don't have to be in the forefront because your mother, your sister, your brother, your cousin, all the people who may be the compliers will do the enforcing for them, just like last time, except this time it will be a broader spectrum. Again, the UN, right? And I'm not saying they're the top, but up here, the UN is the one funding the Western governments to drive certain initiatives. And there's many different initiatives that the media pumps out to propagate our minds, whether we know it or not. So what are people going to do? Again, I ask the friends who, have big mortgages, my friends who have school payments to pay off, people that have large families. And again, perspective, you might have one child and believe you have a large family, but what are you going to do when it's your job that says you have to follow these policies? For example, if the TSA agents if hospitals, as we're seeing right now here in Windsor, Ontario, we're seeing Windsor Regional Hospital, they're already announcing a COVID outbreak, right? Incremental steps, not to worry, they've got it quarantined, but just like the last time, not to worry, not to worry. We're going to keep pumping stories out daily that it's under control, but just letting you know there's scary situations building and building, COVID happening, until the day the narrative changes, and they'll get the directive and they'll let you know when that is by just switching their tone slightly. The outbreaks, the things that they're building the fear on will hit a slight crescendo, and they will have to take measures that unfortunately they don't want to do. And the media will speak it on all the different broadcast stations, the mainstream, the network cable stations, and everyone will gobble it up through their sports, through their late night entertainment. And yes, through social media, even though it's been censored by our government, not the, ironically, censoring social media sites. This time it's our Canadian government who passed through legislature the bill. And they're blaming the social media sites. That's another story. But what are we going to do? What are you going to do when, as a nurse, let's say, you took a shot or two, you complied the last time, but you've learned some things, you've seen the data, not the projections and modeling, but you've seen the data now, and you understand that you've been lied to, and you're not going to put these teratogens in your body any longer. So how are you going to ensure that your words you're saying now match up with your future actions when the policy is written and you'll have to comply or stand up? Are you picturing in your mind that you're just going to stand up? You're just going to say, no, I'm not going to comply, boss. And that's that. Or are you going to try to set yourself up ahead of time? Because again, it's going to be the corporation that's going to put this into place, besides people you may have been angry with before, protesters, people who believe in the Canadian Bill of Rights. There's not going to be a governing body to come and help. They're only going to help what they call help, to try to enforce you to wear a mask or to not have you enter the buildings that want to enforce these measures. Right now, their wording is legalese, but Windsor Regional Hospital is saying that if you're a visitor, you should wear a face covering, a mask, and in some situations, a gown. That's step one right now. That rhetoric will be elevated in a week or two, soon enough. But you better bet your bottom dollar that if you go to the hospital, if you're in need of healthcare, they are going to try to guilt, to threaten you into wearing that mask, or you're not going to get your healthcare coverage. And I don't know if there's anybody left out there who believes that what I just said is not true, that you'll get denied healthcare coverage. But it's happened. It's been happening here in Canada, and I'm sure in other parts of the Western world where corruption and greed has taken over within our government and corporations. But it's not just what are you going to do? If you're going to comply with the measures for yourself? That's a main question that I have for you, the viewer, the person who doesn't want to do it. And I'm with you. I will support you. And there are groups, and I can help link you up if you're one of those people who complied before but doesn't want to comply with what's about to come down the pipeline for the full dominant control of the public domain. It's what the government wants. It's what all the governments want. A global united government of the world eventually is what they want. And they want full compliance, full control of the populace. But as a worker, as a career employee who's been either quietly proud of the job you've done in healthcare, education, wherever you are, whatever job you might have. If you comply with these illegal orders, which you might think are legal because the people involved in the law are saying it, how are you going to fight against it is my point. If you're saying now, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not making someone, forcing them to not come into a retirement home to see their grandma who might be passing away. I won't stand in the way of that loved one seeing their family member. Great. But how are you going to do that while keeping your job? And I'm not saying one must go with the other, but in your thought process of you telling the world that you're not going to comply anymore, how are you going to make sure that you have the strength in here to keep your word to yourself and others when your job will be threatened? Your position will be threatened. Maybe not even your job at first, but if you like the area of where you're working and they say, well, if you're not going to wear the mask, we have to isolate you and put you over here. And that's step one. What happens again when the rhetoric gets elevated? What are you going to do when they say you're going to have to take a leave of absence without pay? Will you comply? My long-winded point is there are mechanisms at play that are going to have to force each and every one of us to look within first. I've been saying this for a few years. We're all going to have to sacrifice in order to gain. And the easiest way to do that is to let go of some of those things that you believe you love that don't really matter in the world. I get you feel they matter to you, but your children's education does not matter. I'll repeat that. Their education currently does not matter if all that's being done is them being brainwashed and indoctrinated, not only to not learn what used to be curriculum in education, but basically you're sending your children, if it's the public sector currently, you're sending them to be indoctrinated to battle and fight against you. Maybe not yet, but when they're teenagers, as we all know, teenagers, I was one of them, can be rebellious. What happens when that rebellion has been supercharged with a focal point of indoctrination that these systems are putting on them? I don't know how I would be able to handle it if I allowed all of these ideas to not just be the seed be planted in my child, but to grow, to be manifested in all these falsehoods of your truths. I'm only interested in the truth. That's all I've ever been interested in. So what are we going to do? Again, that's my question. Each and every one of you has to really think in the job you're in, or if you own a business, how are you going to treat your employees? When, granted, I understand you might not get treated very well if you don't comply according to what the system says. You might not get subsidized. You might get threatened to close down. But what are you going to do? Are you going to close down and rationalize that you're closing so you can stay open in the future and do a good job fighting? Because that's what we know the doctors say. No doctor. There's not one general physician, family physician. I challenge anybody who might be against anything I'm saying. And if you're for what I'm saying, I challenge you as well. Name one family physician globally that knew all of the adverse reactions and side effects or could verify the efficacy of these new experimental mRNA injections, gene therapy. None of them knew themselves, yet all of them, almost all of them, professed how safe and effective they were, not off of the knowledge that they knew themselves, but off of the policy, memo, and protocols put in place by people in positions above them. And all of them, I mean, if you think about it, they all either just believed in what the people above them were saying without having to know the information. Yikes. I don't like doing that, especially when other people are trusting in me. I don't like to just take information, maybe not even read it all, and just say, well, it comes from this source. It must be true. I don't even need to. There's many videos. I don't need to look at them. Just must be true. Or were those doctors thinking, oh, I don't know, because none of us know. All we have is modeling and projections, and we have them saying it's 95% effective. But they're telling me that if I don't, or I'm not allowed to give exemptions, first time in history, they're saying this. So was the mentality of most of the doctors or some of the doctors, I'll do this, I'll step out of the box and do this, I'll comply this one time because I'm sure it'll help. After all, they don't want to harm us. But if I don't do it, my license will be taken from the Board of Physicians, and then how much good can I do in the future? So I better comply so I can do really good things in the future. That's a slippery slope, my friend. And that's how a lot of people, maybe you, will rationalize your decisions in the future when the screws get turned. And I don't want you to do that. The world doesn't want you to do that. That's exactly how Nazi Germany grew. That's how Auschwitz and all the other concentration camps happened. Well, people, citizens, I wouldn't say turned a blind eye, but rather than being swept up themselves, they thought they better just put their head down and comply. We can't do this again. I won't do it again. And this time, there's no fear. Not that I had much fear before, but I have a level of comfort, the knowing that there's a plan from our Creator. And if we follow the plan that our Creator has for us, not everyone believes in the same Creator, but the 10 Commandments are pretty solid commandments to go by as a human. And if we all went by that, the world would be a better place. I'm sure we could all agree on just that one principle and point. But if we conduct ourselves in that way, if we focus the lens not on the government, they're going to do what they're going to do. Corporations are going to do what corporations are going to do. And companies are going to do what they're going to do to save their own butts. The one thing you can control is yourself. And how you conduct yourself matters. You can fight, you can rage against the machine, you can fight against the tyranny and utilize anger. I thought a long time ago that was probably the only way, but it's not, and it's not the right way. Ironically, that's what they want. I'm sure their quantum computer algorithms that the elites have utilized to wargame the different measures they've utilized and will utilize have taken into account all of our pushback. And they bank on the fact that we will be angry, that we will, like children, act out of frustration, which will signal to them their ability to then bring in the next measures to control us for our benefit. And they'll divide. They'll say, we're doing these measures because look at this group over here. They'll tell the POCs, look at these bad white people. These laws will be put in place to protect all of you because look at them over here. And the people over here, if you're not aware of the game plan, will say, yeah, I hear all over the different media and I see the algorithms they pump out on some of the social media. I can see that group of people is bad. So good, make that law. and then we can take care of those bad people. But tell me what law gets removed after it's been put in place? What tax, temporary, made temporary or not, has ever been removed? So once these legislatures and laws are put into place and you get rid of those white supremacists, where does that law focal point get pointed to? Because with progressivism, which is in our Liberal Party, it's the NDP, have spouted that word progressivism forever. And guess who else has it in their name? The Conservatives. Now, I'm not trying to poo-poo on conservatism. I love most conservatism thinking when it's true conservatism. But progressivism is a cancerous seed that infects things, and it always must devour. It always must progress. So once you've gotten rid of those white supremacists, where does that focal point of progressivism point at? Now you have to find someone else to disparage so you can elevate another group. And it's easy to elevate those groups because it seems like in today's day and age, most people would rather take the easy road of being elevated by having another group pushed down. I never took much stock growing up. Things have fluctuated through the years, being born Jewish and going to Hebrew school and all that stuff. There was always that word, don't be anti-Semitic. So there was always some level of protection in this country, at least rhetoric-wise. Although I saw lots of anti-Semitic actions taking place throughout my life, not a big deal, because it happens to every different group of people. In my opinion, it helps you grow thick skin. I'm not saying being rude, being mean, being racist helps people, but people are people, and you can't force the world to be robots. So there'll always be someone throwing sticks and stones verbally, but you don't let it affect you. So that stuff never affected me growing up. But I could have, I guess, utilized Judaism, being a Jew, being Jewish. I could have utilized that as a victimhood status. It seems like a lot of people nowadays would rather grab on to what I call a lazy victimhood status rather than pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and just making a way for yourself. And of course, your family helping guide you. Family is one of the most, if not the most important thing besides our Creator, in helping shape and guide you. All these other things in life are secondary and a byproduct. Work, school. Again, teachers and educators are meant to educate, not to parent. So what are you all going to do when the screws get turned? Are you going to force other people to comply while you don't? Are you going to force them to comply and that's just how it is because you have a mortgage to pay and your kids need to have a roof? I heard that a lot on the campaign trail. You know, what am I supposed to do? I have a mortgage to pay. If I don't wear a mask or if I don't get the arm candy, then I'm not going to have a job. And if I don't have a job, I can't pay the mortgage. And that's worse for my children. And that is bad, obviously. But that is you being put in the mousetrap of a maze in order to make the choice. That's really coercion because you don't want to take it. As I stated to the gentleman, or many people actually, along my travels that said, I made the choice. Like I'm not getting another one, but I made that choice to get the first one because I really wanted to travel, Steve. And I said, well, that's not a choice. That's coercion, respectfully. And we have to admit that to ourselves. It stings. It hurts. Feeling guilt hurts, but we have to admit these things to ourselves in order to be able to move forward in our own mind of thought process so we can break free of that cognitive dissonance. Where are you going to go in the mind when they try and force you? Yes, you have a mortgage to pay, but you don't have to pay that mortgage. You don't have to have the house that you have. You don't have to live alone. If anyone's hearing these words, because I've said it out to people, and I've gotten mixed reactions. I mean, what I'm saying is the truth. But of course, there's a lot of people like, what? So it's that easy to just do it. You're just going to give up your home. Oh, you're just going to live with somebody else? That's really feasible. Well, no, it's not. It's definitely feasible. It's not that likable. We shouldn't have to. It's not fair, but it is a choice for the current situation. And the whole point, it's like survival. You want to survive in order to thrive later, in order to find the right moment, right? If you stay sharp, you stay alive, you try to find the right moment to then seize the next rung on the ring, the ladder, to climb out of the pit you're in. And it's not your fault. It's not our fault that we're in this pit with inflation and funding this giant war overseas that we have not seen any fruit from. It's not fun to have multiple jobs or have both people and the parents and the family have to work and fight tooth and nail and work overtime and not get ahead. I understand that. I feel it too. But I know, just like the people that tell me they made the choice to get the shot in order to travel, that's coercion. And this is a level of coercion as well. But at least you can choose what benefits you the most, and you can war game ahead of how we together collectively can not just get through the tyranny, but then wear out the tyranny like Muhammad Ali would do, rope-a-dope, right? Let them do what they're doing because they've already lost. I should have led with this. They've already lost, right? This is like the rabid animal that you've already caught, right? We already know the corruption. We already know the levels. They are doing, you know how much money is being siphoned and funded in order to cover up every single level of corruption that these oligarchs, government workers, corporate CEOs, and all the people down the pipeline that are complicit to this, they know it's over. They don't have a choice but to keep on doubling, quadrupling down, right? Some of these doctors that know they're in front of the government for liability, they know. They don't have a choice, some of them in their minds, but to double, triple, quadruple down with their rhetoric and say, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. No, have another. Because if you're not around 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, then you can't have a lawsuit. Or if you're too sick, if you're too injured, if you're too worn down, then you won't fight against it then, and then you won't be as big of a problem. But we need to really think about how we're going to galvanize our souls so we can combat this, not with anger, not with hate, but with love. You know, it was whether you believe in Jesus as your savior, I don't think anybody will disagree that the man Jesus was alive historically, and his words were to combat hate. This isn't verbatim, but his words were to treat your enemy with love, right? Someone who steals from you, someone who you know just ripped you off, charged you $50 for something they know and you know is only worth $5, but you really need it, so they ripped you off. Answer them back with love. Give them $60 instead of $50. I know it sounds crazy. How do I give them more if I don't even have it? The thing about what some people call karma in the universe, we all know it's the ultimate creator, but the thing about that is when you do these acts of love, when you dig deep within your soul, even when it's difficult to, when your programmed response is to be angry and to say, well, they deserve it. You rationalize, they deserve your anger and hate. That only creates more of the thing you're trying to remove. And I know this because I've felt it. I've dished it out before. And I see now through my own bad actions in the past that I can look at with that focal point lens back at myself and say, this was wrong. I'm going to repent. I'm not going to do that again, even though it just comes innately, not innately maybe, but naturally from my programming. I have to fight against that because of the goal that I want at the end. And that's for unity. That's for what we define as peace, not the true definition, but what we want as people. It's what I want too. And I want us to do it under what we already have, the Canadian Bill of Rights, which, as I've stated from the beginning of this pandemic, reaffirms our innate rights that no man or woman can take away. Only you can relinquish those rights if you choose to. And you can't or shouldn't allow them to coerce you in order to follow the measures that they want to do in order to have complete control over the human domain. I wish I have lots more to say and little time. I was hoping to get some questions here. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but there are comments here. Let's see. Okay, so before I go, sir, do you know if Windsor is participating in the September 20th 1 million March for Children? So far, I haven't seen one. Thanks. Yes, they are. And let me see here if I can pull up a quick banner for you. Hopefully I've shared it on my page, and I'll see if I can screenshot this page. This is the first time I'm going to attempt any of this here. So allow me to see if I can screen share here. So I'm going to need someone to tell me if I am screen sharing in a second. Here we go. Okay. So I am sharing right now what looks to be the advertisement for the Parents for Parents Right 1 million March for Children. So yes, we are hosting that as well. You can see the date is Wednesday, obviously, September 20th, 9 a.m., all school walkout. I'm glad I saw the comments here so I can mention this because I do want to say something on this. Everybody has their own opinion, and you are free to share and express your opinion however you like. Ideally, what we want, again, we want to think about the end result that we want. Do we just want to shout things back and forth at people? Do we want to go at this in anger? No. No, we don't. Right? We want to have a unifying message that we are the rational, sane parents or adults who are looking out for the children and trying to protect their innocence and cultivate their learning experience of curriculum at school. So please, even though you might feel anger, let's be respectful and try to really think of how we want to relay our message so we can be listened to and not have sound clips and little talking points taken by CBC and the fake stream media where they'll present someone yelling or screaming at a counter protester perhaps. Let's not give them the ammo that they try to use through their extensive, expensive editing. Let's handle this with love. Okay. That's that. So, next question. Julie Ann. Okay, she just shared the information. Thank you, Julianne. Blueprint for Canada. Action for Canada has it as well on their website. Thank you guys for sharing that. Bill of Rights. Yep. Everybody should study the Canadian Bill of Rights. Now, a lot of people say that that document doesn't count. And there's so much minutia in that. I don't want to get into too much detail, but it exists. It was made. It's not fictional. Every single person on the planet, or at least in this country, can agree it was made. So when you say it doesn't exist, or the charter was made to be utilized instead of that, perhaps it was, but we know the charter is a bullshit document, and it's been utilized in court to wipe everybody's butt with. The charter has been stomped on. Unfortunately, the Bill of Rights has been winning. And when I say winning, if cases keep getting dropped, withdrawn, or thrown out before they even make it to court, that's a win. I've had freedom people argue with me, and I will debate, but I refuse to argue with like-minded people because we're uniting. So I won't argue, but I'll respectfully debate someone. And I'm not going to play that fact checker game. I don't know why people do that, where they go, the Bill of Rights didn't win in court. Does it look like the judge ruled that you won? So you're wrong. The Canadian Bill of Rights doesn't work. Well, it's just like the information that we share, that of white papers of CEOs. When a corporation says they're going to be doing something and they're telling their shareholders, it's most likely what they're going to be doing, even if it hasn't been announced publicly. So we can understand that. We should be able to understand this concept as well. So the Bill of Rights has weight. It carries a lot. The problem is no one studies it. Like a lot of the regular scheduled vaccination rounds, there isn't any in-depth study when it comes to general physicians when they're training up in school. There's like half of a day. And that half of a day consists of, these are the vaccinations. This is what they are for. This is the good they do. The same information anybody can get on the government website. They're good. Move on to the next thing. And you push that they're good. Someone else has looked into it above you within the medical system, and they're good. That's your education, doctors. And they put that in their soul as a galvanized fact that everybody is on the up and up, that has done their job in the testing. But we know that's not the case. So with the Bill of Rights, if no one in the education system teaches the Bill of Rights to lawyers when they're learning, when they're in, I'm going to use layman terms, lawyer school, if they're not learning the Bill of Rights, if they only learn the charter, then they're not learning the Bill of Rights. And if the judges who were once lawyers, who once went to the same educational institutions, never learned about the Bill of Rights, and nobody utilizes it within the court system, so they didn't learn it there, then they don't know it, then they're not utilizing it. So when someone brings up the Bill of Rights, like another lawyer or someone who is working pro bono because they're just starting and they bring it up, and then a judge mocks or laughs at them and says that doesn't get utilized, or you can't use that, or someone in general conversation says it, and lawyers take it at face value because nobody's taught it to them. After all, there's smarter people above them who they lean on, and if they don't know it, if they don't lean on the Bill of Rights, surely it must not be real, it must not be true, it must not work. But that's the problem. That's the main problem right there. It's a real document. It was created. Nobody argues that. It was a bill. It is the Bill of Rights. But just because it was pushed to the side, just because we didn't need to utilize it, or as citizens we felt we had our freedom, and it quietly got swept under the rug for so long, and then when our rights started getting grasped and taken away, the charter got pulled out, and then it got crushed with a rationale and narrative, and people just accepted that. But the bill has been winning, and it wins by the cases being dropped before they make it into court, or the day of court they get withdrawn, or the prosecution starts offering deals. It happens all the time. Check out Stand for Thee. Stand, the number 4, the THEE.com. They have great information. They have Zoom meetings for the general public, anybody that wants to learn, and you can empower yourself. And trust me, when you utilize this, your case will be dropped, withdrawn, and maybe in the odd case, it might actually make it to trial and you'll win. If you do your homework, get the proper people on board to help you. It doesn't mean you need to pay anybody, really, if you find the right people to help you understand how you're going to present your case utilizing the Canadian Bill of Rights. And you'll win. You'll win in the unconventional way that they won't go to court with you. Just the same type of win that everyone else understands is a win. If a country goes to war and says, we declare war, and they pull out their massive weaponry, and the other country that doesn't have such massive weaponry goes, whoa, we didn't know you had that. We're going to think of a rationale of why we're not coming to the table and going to war. You can say what you want, but that's a win. That's a win for the ones who have the biggest weapons in that case. If the other team doesn't want to play, if they forfeit, it's still a win. So fact checkers, go away or have a debate with me. I'm not the smartest person in the world, not even close, but I understand truth. And I understand the Canadian Bill of Rights and how it functions in our Canadian society and how it could function if people utilized it. The same way that we could all function so much better if we all developed a backbone and did not comply to the measures that are about to come down the pipeline. No. You say it kindly. When the boss at work says, we're going to have to start wearing a mask, Susie. Okay, every employee has to wear a mask for the safety of the customer. You can smile and say, thank you. No, thank you. No. And they say, well, you're going to have to go home. You could ahead of time empower yourself with the policy, learn the policy, but you can say respectfully, no, I'm not going home. It's my shift, or I work here. Make them uncomfortable. It's pretty simple. Make them uncomfortable in a loving way, right? Somebody wants you to wear a mask at a store, as Andrew Tate stated, make them work for it respectfully. You can't hear them with their mask on. They're going to have to come closer. They come close. That's too close, 6 feet. Make them back up, right? You can tell them that it's your right to not wear one, and they're going to say what they're going to say. And then you can say, oh, okay, I don't have one. No, they'll be happy to provide you with one because they want to feel that power, most likely, of domineering you and you putting that mask on. So make them walk. They got to walk back and go get one, or maybe they have one in their pocket. They pull it out. You can say, well, I don't, sorry, that came from your pocket. It's dirty. I'd like a fresh, clean one, please. Make them walk and go get one, right? Through your compliance, most people are lazy in the ways that they don't want to do things. Everybody works hard at the things they love, right? But most people aren't in positions, they're not in jobs that they love. Some people trick themselves and say they are. Some people actually are. Those people are probably happy people. But most people trick themselves and say, I love my job. Most nurses don't. Most teachers don't. I wish they did. My mother was one. She was a teacher who loved her job. And it showed. She worked tirelessly for the kids to do assignments, to create things at night, to have us help her. We woke up at 5:30 in the morning so my mom could get to, well, first so we could make sure my grandparents were taken care of before my mom went to school. And then we'd go to school and she'd be preparing for the day. And then we'd stay after school an hour to an hour and a half. So she would start preparing for the next day. And this was on a daily occurrence. She was one of the good ones. But most people coast through their job. They don't truly care. The caring is the byproduct. They care about the pension. They care about, if you're a teacher, the summer's off. They care when everything is smooth. And I'm sure they're happy. It's not that they're evil intent. I'm sure they're happy when children succeed. I'm not saying they're bad, but through the laziness of getting a job because it looked good on TV or it sounds good through the shows we watched growing up. When people get discouraged at the jobs they're at, or whether they are worked too hard, like nurses, right? Underpaid and understaffed, then you don't put as much effort in. It's difficult to run it 100% of the time. So people start compromising first with their ethics, then their morals. And this is the time, is what I'm saying. This is the time where you have to find whatever it is to pump up that energy, to pump up your soul, to galvanize your heart so you have the energy to fight against lovingly what you know is wrong and what you know can't win. We can't allow tyranny with the putting on the disguise of loving kindness that they do. It's a virtue signal. We can't allow that to win. The truth, honor, and justice must win. And by looking to the laws of our Creator, that will help tether our morals so we don't start veering off and rationalizing the measures we take, right? We don't want to veer off like so many people have, forcing others to comply because of the power position they have. If you were paying attention to the Creator's document and not veering away from that as culture changed, then you and so many people wouldn't be rationalizing the tyrannical choices that we've made in order to get by in today's society. It's time to stop complying with soft tyranny, or else it's going to be hard tyranny soon. Anyway, are there any more questions for this current session here? And if anybody has anything you'd like me to bring up, I'd be happy to talk about it. I'm back again. I'm back from the trip. We're going to have a lot of interviews coming up, okay? We're going to have Pastor Alan Armstrong this week, who was interviewed by Rebel a few weeks ago. He's the pastor who was preaching in a park in Windsor, Ontario, and 10 police vehicles showed up to stop, detain, and ultimately fine and issue a lifetime trespass warning to a taxpayer publicly funded domain space. So he'll be on. We're going to have a city councilor on in the very near future. We're going to have a roundtable of parents for parents' rights ahead of the march coming up, so we can discuss tactics and measures and different things that the educational system is planning, and the comments of Stephen Lecce, the education minister, and how that may affect or not affect the policies that have been put in place in our education system regarding the curriculum or that lack thereof on the sexuality or sexualizing of children. We'll be discussing all of that. I plan on having Ontario Party leader Derek Sloan on in the near future, coming up after some of these other guests. You tell me who you would like to have on, and we will work at getting that person on. There's one thing you can understand from me or about me is I seek the truth. I only want to expel the truth, and I want to help society. I want to help fellow man. because I can't help my child if we don't help each other. The same rules apply to her. If there's tyranny on you, there's tyranny on her. And I can't have that. So we have to work together. We have to unite. Let's find the right people who can speak more eloquently than me on these subject matters. I'll get them on here and we can debate or discuss and hopefully bring enlightenment to ourselves and others. Until next time, friends, I love you. I'm always around if you have questions, and we will see you very soon.